Ask Alec.
Hey guys, it's Alec Torelli. Welcome back to an episode of Ask Alec from the Grand Hyatt Erewhon in Bangkok. Quick update on my last Ask Alec video. I'm down to my last $50, my poker and life roll. That was the title. And for those of you asking about Andy, he is successfully selling his pre-flop charts. I highly recommend you check out that video. And if you guys want to get his pre-flop charts, definitely hit him up via email in the link at the description below. Awesome video, and I highly encourage you guys to check it out. For those of you wondering, I wasn't drunk in that video. I was just super fired up to help a random fan of mine. So anyway, check it out. Leave me your thoughts in a comment below. All right, on to today's question. Comes from another guy named Andy, not the same one, but it reminded me of last week. Anyway, it comes from Andy, and he asks, can anyone be a successful poker player, professional poker player? I think this is a great question. And while I'm going to save a little bit of the attributes that make up a successful poker player for a future Ask Alec video, I actually have some ideas on that I'd like to cover maybe next week. But today I'm going to focus on, can anyone be a successful poker pro? And I think that first of all, we have to say, what does successful mean? So if you want to say that, can anybody make money playing poker, that's different to me than can anyone be a very successful poker pro. Maybe a successful poker player means something different to everyone. Can they reach the highest levels of poker, or can they just make a living playing poker? What kind of living? So there's a lot of ambiguity that's interlaced into this question, and so I think it's a difficult one to answer. But I'm going to talk differently about each place that I think people could reach within the poker world. And we'll go from there. So first of all, I think anybody could make money playing poker. I think anybody could be turned into a winning player. And I definitely think that pretty much anyone, if they work hard, can make money playing poker. Now, there are a lot of different ways to make money playing poker. You could either be one of the best players and just make money by playing in any game, or you could be very good at seeking out good games to play in. You could be very good game selecting. You can have a lot of discipline. There are a lot of different strengths that you can use in order to find a way to make money in the game. I mean, there are players that make money by getting into huge private home games, and they're not even that good at poker. They're just they have very good personalities, and they're good at getting into games, and so they make money that way, even though their skill level isn't very high. So if you want to make money playing the game, it's important to realize that talent is only one aspect of making money. And while it generally has a high correlation coefficient between your talent and the amount of money you make, it doesn't always mean that, because a lot of players that have a lot of talent they don't game select, and they don't necessarily play when they're playing their A game. They're prone to tilt. They have other life habits that take away from their ability to make money at playing poker. On the other hand, there are mediocre players, super nits, that just game select. They only play in games with huge fish, and they seek out those games. They're willing to be very disciplined and do what it takes to play only in those games. They're very humble. They don't have an ego, and they make more money than some of the players that are better than them. So can anyone make money playing poker? Yes. Now, the second question, the second level of this question, I suppose, is can anybody make a living playing poker? And I would say that there's different levels to this question. You know, what is your definition of making a living? I mean, it depends on your current living situation and how much you need to survive. I think that anyone can make a living playing poker insofar as they are very modest with their spending habits, because that would mean that they need to make less money in order to qualify for this sort of threshold. Some people want to make a living and make a huge living, like maybe make over $100,000 a year, and a sizable income, let's say, and that's a different caliber of bracket. So I think anyone could support themselves playing poker, because I think that the threshold you need to support yourself in most places in the world isn't that high if you're conservative. And so I think you can make a living playing poker even if you play something like 2-5 no limit, if you game select, the game runs often, and you're one of the better players in the game. So I think if you're at the 2-5 level, definitely the 5-10 level, you could absolutely make a living playing poker. Now, can you make a good living playing poker, or be what I would say is one of the successful professionals, not just a successful player and not just a professional, but a successful professional, which is the level up here? I would say that level is playing and beating, 5-10 or higher. And that's a different caliber of player. And I'd say that is a little bit harder to just break through. I think that most people can do it, but I think that almost everyone isn't willing to apply themselves enough to do that. So as we go up, in these ranks. And as we move up in the levels of success that we're talking about, the amount of effort, discipline, and sacrifice that's required to reach that level is much higher. And so you have to be honest with yourself. You have to be honest with the situation that you're in or the other people are in and say, like, you know, the reason that most people aren't getting to this level is simply it's a lack of priority. And that's not a bad thing. It's not someone to fault someone for. It doesn't mean that they're a lesser person. Frankly, most people in the world shouldn't have the priority of making it to, you know, a very competent level of being a professional in poker, and thank God for that. You know, we need a lot of people doing other things besides playing poker in the world, or it wouldn't be a great place to live. So I don't think that most people have this priority, and I think it's important to acknowledge that first, that if you're not willing to put in a serious amount of work, have a lot of sacrifice, deal with a lot of ups and downs and some stress, and have a lot of support from people around you, it's going to be very hard to be what I would say a successful professional is. The entry level to a successful professional, which is beating 5-10 cash game no limit hold'em, or maybe playing like $1,000 buy-in tournament, something around that level. So I think that anybody could get there, but I just think that it's very hard to do because of what it takes from your personality and a time and an energy and a sacrifice commitment to make it to this level. So this is what I would say is like making it in an artistic or sort of like an esoteric profession. Is like anybody could be a competent writer, a competent photographer, a competent whatever, but there's a huge difference between doing those activities for a living, and most people just aren't willing to go to that length, not just in poker, but in other more esoteric professions as well. So then we have another category of player, which is like very successful professional, and this is the level of player that I wod say not everybody can access, right? So I think everybody could probably access that, scrape the surface, access that 5-10 level, like beating that game 5-10, 10-20. I think we could get almost anybody to that level, but above that, if you want to be like, I want to be one of the most successful poker professionals, that's just, in my opinion, not a level that anybody can get to, because now we're talking about an elite level of player that's like the NBA of an industry, right? However you want to categorize that industry. Maybe not NBA because that's limited to like 100 people, but let's say like a couple thousand people that are doing something. And I think that that's a level that it's very hard to say that anybody could get to, because there definitely is some barrier to entry, and I think you have to have maybe certain characteristic attributes. You have to start at the right time. You have to be certain like prone to risk. You have to have a certain maybe personality for the game. You have to have a certain knack for it. And I just think that that's not something that just like anybody in the world could enter into. And that's rightly so with other sports. That's rightly so with maybe reaching the top of being like a writer or like a chess player. Like there's certain things you have to do. You have to get in at the right time. You have to start early enough. You have to put in enough time when you're young, probably, when you don't have other commitments, when you're able to dedicate a serious portion of your life to reaching a very, very high level of not just poker, but of any profession. And I think that same trend applies to across all industries, right? If you want to be like the CEO level of a company, you can't just start when you're 50, right? You can't like get to that level usually unless you have experience prior or working in an industry prior. So I think poker applies the same thing. But the good news is that like most people in the world don't need to be at that level. Most people in the world don't want to be at that level. And most of the people, even like the clients I work with, the students I work with, they're most of their goals and ambitions are just to be like winning in their 2-5 game, move up to 5-10, maybe even play 10-20. And those levels are where I think that anyone or almost anyone could get to if they work hard, apply themselves, and they study. Now, the last thing is that like it's going to be different for different people. So it's going to be harder for certain people to improve because maybe they're not as naturally, I don't want to say naturally gifted, but maybe they haven't used that part of their brain as often that it's required to be successful at something like poker when they were an adolescent. So maybe someone's very good at math, they're going to have an easier route to being a successful player because they've already have a foundation that's a skill set that's necessary for poker. So it's going to take different amounts of work for everyone, but that doesn't mean that if someone had a gun to their head, they couldn't do it. And that's something I think, maybe not a gun to your head, that's like a little strong, but if they had a serious motivation or serious passion or serious will, that they couldn't get to that level. So I hope that answers your question. Next week on Ask Alec, I will try and do a video on the attributes that I think are important to cultivate and the character traits that I think are necessary to reach these high levels of success in poker. So leave me your thoughts in a comment below. Let me know what you think about this. Can anyone get to a high level in poker? I would love to hear from you guys because I know it's an interesting, controversial subject. And that's it for Ask Alec. Subscribe to my channel. Please give it a thumbs up and share this video if you liked it. And I'll see you guys next time. Take it easy. Thanks for watching.